Hey, I'm Paul from VRP Rocks, and I'm delighted to have back on the show a man I really enjoyed speaking to right at the beginning of this whole process back in 2020, I think it was that I first spoke to him. Now, he's a wonderful drummer with some incredible experiences, and he's back to tell me his five favorite songs from his career. And there's some incredible names in this list as well, and I'm looking forward to hearing these stories. So, first of all, welcome back to VRP Rocks. Pick with us.
Hi, folks. Well, thank you for that introduction. It's very flattering. And yeah, it's a bit like Desert Island Discs, isn't it? Except it's Desert Island Reflections.
That's
Yeah.
it. That's it indeed.
Yeah, it was really interesting, sort of just not so much choosing them, but discovering things that I've completely forgotten about, and with some of it I actually, I was going to really throw a kind of curveball at you. I was going to put a Shawaddy Waddy
Oh,
song in
really?
there. Yeah, I did a record with them called Why, and it was hilarious because they're from Leicester, and a great friend of mine, Ray Martinez, was he just lost his two brothers recently. They're all musicians. Ray was playing with them, and he put me up for the session, and it was really funny because they would only over a weekend, and by the end of the weekend, I was speaking back in broad Leicester accent. Yeah, hey up you, what you doing? And I didn't even know I was doing it. So, and it's if you ever go on YouTube and look at Shawaddy Waddy, why? As long as it's the record and not a kind of performance, it's and Ray does a killer solo, so it's worth listening anyway. And it swings like the clappers, and I'm very critical of all that, so it definitely swings.
Oh, there you go.
My seal of approval.
Absolutely.
But
Well,
no, I
Shawty Waddy
didn't.
has not made the top five, unfortunately, but one we are going to start with is one from the early 70s then. Tell us about this. This is a band that I researched and it's difficult to find a lot of information about. So tell us about your first choice.
Well, this is a band called Spring. I'd come back from Italy and I was looking for a gig. I'd lived in Italy for 3 years and I was in London. While I was in Italy, we did a summer kind of booking for about 3 weeks with a two band gig. It was for about a fortnight. This group was called the Doc Thomas Group. Now, those aficionados who follow history of bands, the Doc Thomas Group was the first incarnation of Mott the Hoople,
Okay.
and they were playing in Italy with us at this gig in Riccione, the Bat Cavern, it was called. So for some reason, when I went back to London, I don't know how it worked, but I looked them up, and they were staying in a basement flat just off Sloane Square, and they'd metamorphosed into Mott the Hoople. And I was crashing on their floor and just going to all these auditions because I was looking at the Melody Maker, and my friends, now Doc Thomas Group, now Mott the Hoople, they were quite hilarious, actually. That's a program on its own. They recognized a telephone number for an advert. Oh, that'll be Rockfield Studios. We know the guy there. And this band were advertising for a drummer, and they were at Rockfield Studios. And I walked it. I went on the bus. I don't know how it worked. I can't remember. I got on a bus from Victoria Station, had one brief conversation, sat on the bus for 6 hours, got out this provincial town called Monmouth, like a quaint little one street market town on the borders of Wales and England. Walked into this embryonic studio. There was a band from Leicester, so I'd done my own version of the Melody Maker thing. Like I walked in, oh, he's from Leicester. It worked, but that's the band that became Spring. And over the course of about maybe 2-3 years, we made two albums. The first one was released, was called, I think it was just called Spring, and you can still get copies of that somehow. What I liked about being in Spring through the whole duration, even with the personnel changes, was it was the first band. I was about 24 really, that had done probably 90% of its original material, and it was the first time I really felt like I'm really into something here. Really enjoying it, and it was really maybe a bit of rose tinted spectacles, but we used to. It was the days when you would listen to a Saturday afternoon program. I think John Peel or somebody DJ'd radio show on Radio 2, whatever it was. And you'd hear things like Free, King Crimson, Emerson, Lake and Palmer. Felt like there really was some sort of movement going on, and we did a lot of gigs this spring down in the South Wales and the Valleys boys, and we played in all these rugby clubs, and just people just it was almost like people coming out of the hills they were called, oh, he's ahead. In other words, he smokes a special kind of cigarette, and it was just joyous times. Really, I was still kind of carefree, and just living in the moment, really. And we lived at this studio, which was Rockfield, which even when I stopped really going there after a while, you kind of forget what's been recorded there. Loads of stuff, Queen and Ace, and yours truly. And the funniest thing that came out of it, or one of the funny things, when I was in Dire Straits and the first tour, we were only doing little clubs. I remember somewhere north of New York or somewhere on the way down, and we played in this club, and a guy came in after the show with a Spring album.
Oh wow!
Yeah, and which had become like collector's piece. People pay over the odds for them, because it's just like there aren't many of them.
Yeah,
sad to say, we didn't sell that many. In other words, or there weren't that many printed, so the record company didn't think it was that that promising. But no, Mark just saw this guy coming with the album, just automatically went into sign it. He went, "Oh no, you're not signing this." And it was great. It was a great moment. I saw the humour in it. I don't think Mark did. So,
so in terms of this band then Spring,
I think.
Well, indeed. So in terms of this band then Spring, the song that you've chosen from this time, as you said, it's from the second album, which we didn't see the light of day at the time, though, did it? But the song was called "Painted Ship." So tell us about this song in particular.
It's in 6/8 and 3/4, which is unusual for rock and roll. Really, I'm not saying it's unprecedented. Things like Nights in White Satin were in 6/8. And I also sing on it, which is, kind of a bonus. So all the harmonies are me, which is a very rare sighting in the recording studio. And it just evokes really nice memories of the whole period. And it's, if you listen to the track, I don't think there's any guitar on it. So it's like a little combo. And the drums are featured here and there, but just basically it's just happy memories, and it's a really tidy little track. Also a plea for somebody, the guy who plays the keyboards, who is called Kips Brown, but he prefers to be called Keith now. We're all desperately trying to find him. So if he ever sees this, get in touch with you if he wants to, and then you could pass on my details. But it's I just have a huge affection for the band. A couple of the guys have passed on now. So, that's basically it, really. I have fond memories of it.
Okay, so that's choice one. Then let's move on to choice two. It's a couple of years later. A guy that people will know from Pentangle probably is your next choice. Lost Love by Bernd Jansch. So tell us about this one then.
Well, it's when I first moved up to London. It's one of the first gigs I got. I really like this because it's Bert was going through a phase where he didn't want to be a solo artist for a while. He wanted a band, and it was kind of stripped down to me and Rod Clements, who was the bass player at Lindisfarne.
Yes. Yeah.
And I just think it's so much part and parcel of the 70s, where the sound quality, it's fantastic. It's the same kit that I used on Sultans. I had this love. I've still got it, but I'm contemplating selling it because I've got too many kits. Basically, I just like the feel of the track. There's just 3 instruments on it. There may be an overdubbed guitar, no electric guitars. It's just and of course Rod in those days played a fretless bass, and I don't know what it is. I just adore a fretless bass. It's almost like that advert that when they on the television they use for some sort of comfort fabric softener, where they all sort of do this, and it just seems like you can with a fretless, it doesn't have that sort of attack at the beginning of the note, and you can wrap yourself around it. And it's just I really have. I'm quite proud of that track, really. And it's the first time that the Gretsch drums really, I would say, punch above their weight. They sound great. The bass drum is a tiny, tiny bass drum, but if you listen to the track, it's got such a kind of warmth and a depth and without being in your face.
Yeah.
I just like the way Bert sings that song. I think people concentrate on his guitar, but focus on his guitar. But I think he's a good little singer as well. So, and it's just a little 3-piece, but you don't really kind of notice that so much. The sound just envelops you.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So, and remember, folks, you must listen on speakers or headphones.
That's it. Listen to it properly.
None of this in ear tin.
Absolutely. And a lot of what you've just said about that song Lost Love can kind of be mirrored for your next choice as well, where you talk about strong bass and a lovely voice and things like that, because your next choice number 3 is Ralph McTell with Nightmares. I mean, this has got a lovely bass to it as well, and beautiful distinctive vocals as well. So tell us about this track.
Well, it stems from Bert because they were managed by the same guy.
Okay.
So I don't know how far back Streets of London was, but this was post that. His big hit was Streets of London, which has been recorded so many times. It's like a folk version of My Way, I think. There are lots of people who have covered it. So we're doing this album, and it's got Rod on bass as well, Rod Clements on bass, and it's in Air Studios, which is an association of independent record producers. So it was George Martin's studio. He wasn't producing it, but and it was in. This is unbelievable when I reflect upon it. I drove a car, beat up Volkswagen Fastback, wish I still had it, with a kit in to Oxford Circus, and somehow I was allowed into the loading bay, which was also for Lewis's or somewhere else, and took the kit up I don't know what I did with the car. I think I even left the car there. Something, and recorded in the studio. The control room, you could look over Oxford Circus. It's not there now because a lot of our artists that were using it found that they were recognised as they came out of Oxford Circus into the studio, and it became a logistic problem. But what's really good about it is that. Being George Martin's kind of baby, he chose the best engineers. I think the guy's name was Jeff Sweetenham. So the sound is impeccable. And again, I'd forgotten how, same kit. I might have added something because I can't quite work out. It's very tom-tom driven. There's no kind of real drum kit pattern, as in boom chapa boom, something constant. It's more a kind of atmospheric.
Yes, it rolls, doesn't it?
Recording, and the drums just play like have a dramatic kind of involvement, which is away from reinforcing or suggesting the rhythm. And so I just have really good memories of doing that, and it also feeds into that thing of feeling, now I work with Bert, now I work with Ralph, and I think I did some gigs with Ralph as well. So it was all kind of reassuringly progressive in a way, in terms of the way I saw my career developing. I'm quite proud of that track, in as much as, again, I use the same kind of scientific approach, like well, maybe I've matured. I can accept mistakes now more readily, and not want to re-record something just for the sake of one moment where you tripped up, because you jeopardize losing all the atmosphere, the novelty, the whole kind of freshness of recording for the sake of getting it perfectly right, and then it might become sterile. So that was that. Nightmares, it's called.
Lovely stuff and a great song as well. So let's move on to choice four now. And we're going to, I think it's 1979 for this next one. It's an interesting one. It's Your Time with Bob Dylan from his interesting record, Slow Train Coming. Now, first of all,
Yeah.
let's begin with how did you end up playing on this record with Bob?
What it was that Wexler and his co-producer, Barry Beckett, they both passed on now. Barry Beckett's the great kind of keyboard player from Muscle Shoals, played on loads and loads of stuff in the 60s and 70s. Bob had wanted them to produce an album of his. Now, I don't know if he had the idea that because it was going to be this religious album, which I didn't know anything about at all, he wanted a really good recording of it or something. I don't know. But it just fell into the kind of remit that they were free just after we'd done Communique. We had just done a tour. No, we did a tour after the recording Communique, and it ended up in LA. I think played at the Roxy in LA, and there was a kind of artist bar upstairs from the club, and that's where we met him. And I think he just checked us out as players, really, and it was all kind of rubber stamped. And then I remember we went to his office in Santa Monica, which was like a detached building upstairs. I think he had an office and a small studio. And I didn't play anything really. I just had a tambourine, and we just listened to some of the songs that he had. And that was it. And then some time later, we flew up to Muscle Shoals, Alabama, and this particular kind of moment, we had a couple of kits. The one that was set up for recording, we had another one, like a casual kit near the piano, and we would just routine the songs until we got them into some shape, and then you'd go to the kit and play. And it was kind of understood quite quickly that you would probably get two, not more than 3 takes to do it, and he would just move on. If he didn't like it, he would move on. And what I would say about that is that the benefit of that is that when you're playing on sort of, again, analog tape, you get the benefit of somebody who's singing for keeps. They're not doing a guide vocal. They're not doing a tracer vocal. They're not doing this is probably how it goes vocal. They're doing the vocal that you hear on the record. And I just thank you, because you've actually got something to lock onto, something to give you an idea, because you can never be sure when you're recording in those kind of moments what is really going to be on the end product. So I didn't get the benefit of the horns or the percussion, all those beautiful girls singing. In fact, they all turned up on the first day, and Wexler's job was more like an executive producer. He would just get hold of Bob and say, "Look, Bob, we don't need the girls today. Let's take them back to the house, let them chill out." And Bob wasn't used to that, because all of his albums thus far, I would posit, were, if you weren't there when somebody said recording, you weren't on the record, because Bob didn't do overdubs. I think I've sort of spoken about this before, but if you like, it was like I was a big Dylan fan. I used to had Desire and Blood on the Tracks and John Wesley Harding, Blonde on Blonde. So it was a big thing for me to play, because it was like, wow, this is a guy I listened to so many times. It's almost akin to somebody phoning you up and say, "Look, you're playing for Rotherham United," and somebody phones up and says, "Look, yeah, put your boots in the bag. You're going over to Manchester City. Pep wants you." What? Yeah, he thinks you've got real potential, So you go over there, and all you're really being asked to do is do what got you noticed in the first place. But psychologically, it's a whole other thing. So what we decided on the end of the first day was that I was listening to Bob too much, or his guitar. So Barry said, "Look, Pick, tomorrow, just concentrate on the voice. Don't listen to his guitar. In fact, we won't put it in the cans. And if you like, once in a while, you can say, when we ask you if the cans, the headphones are okay, just say something like, well, can they have more guitar? And we go, yeah, but you're not getting it. And so it's from the second day onwards. Anyway, I was there for 10 days. And so was Mark. So we did all that we did on that record is all in 10 days. And Muscle Shoals. It was it's a funny old place.
Absolutely. And we've got to touch on the track itself that you picked. You got to serve somebody. I mean, that was a big single for Bob, wasn't it? He won a Grammy, I think, for that song as well. So talk a little bit about that song and how that song came together while you're in the studio.
Well, it was no different to the others. It was just one of about 7 or 8 songs. You just sat around his piano, or Barry played the piano and Dylan played guitar. I'm not quite sure what it was, to get a feel. And I think Barry suggested the bass drum pattern for me. So, and I don't have many recollections of it. It's just a tight little group. It was myself, Tim Drummond, Mark on guitar, Barry playing probably piano, and Bob was in a booth singing. He may have been playing guitar, but I wouldn't know, would I?
You weren't allowed to listen.
And that was it, what it became, with all the other stuff on it and the girls and the mix and stuff, it becomes a whole, it's like the germ of an idea. By the time it's a record, it's probably not what you thought you played on. It's just, and there's a skill to being able to, I don't know, play what's required, play big enough that whatever goes on there, you don't get in the way, and you don't get kind of overpowered by what comes, and it's an unquantifiable skill that you have to somehow have instinct to do it, which we'll come on to the last track.
So let's move on to that final track then that we spoke of. And you have mentioned a few times Dire Straits in the early days and things like that. And you've chosen a track from the third album, haven't you? Making Movies. And it's a fun little track. I really like this one. I mean, the album itself had some huge songs on there, Romeo and Juliet and Tunnel of Love, and Espresso Love is one of my favorites as well. But you've gone with the fun track Skateaway. So why have you chosen that one?
When we were recording it or mixing it, Pistorius there's 2 studios basically at the power station. There's a big studio where we recorded, and there's a little studio where it tended to be for overdubs and for mixing. You could play in there, but the main studio was the big attraction for a lot of bands. And the room was octagonal, and a big piano. It had big aeroplane wings, baffles they call them. They could be lowered, and mics that could be lowered, and he had Hessian and wood paneling that was all stressed in so that the sound would disperse, and little cubicles where you could put the drums for isolation. Because the key to recording in those days was to kind of isolate individual instruments so they wouldn't bleed onto other instruments. So you could have a lot of control over the equalizing the sound post the recording, So I remember the engineer was called Shelley Yakas. He was like Jimmy Iovine's engineer. And Jimmy Iovine, the Italian guy, he was funny, real New Yorker. I just loved New York in those days. And Shelley made me use very thin, what we call, Remo is a skin manufacturer, but they have different thicknesses and different materials. And made me use this very thin skin called Diplomat. And we put all the skins on with a torque thing. So we made all the tension the same and recorded it. And after about 3 takes, they were done. So I still had to hit them, and their elasticity had gone, and so changed the skins. And it became a labor of love. And I sort of thought, I don't want, I'm fed up with this. But the recording, when you hear the recording, it kind of makes it all worthwhile, And so and it was, I think it was the first time I hadn't used a Gretsch. So it was a big kit. So there was more kind of sounds to produce or to access, if you like. And he also insisted that I use this very cheap pair of cymbals, which guys wouldn't normally use, and for the hi-hats, the ones that go together. And he said the reason being that when they're really good cymbals, they bleed over all the other drums, all the mics on the other drums, and it's very hard to contain. And his idea was that these were quite dull, and he could doctor the sound off post recording with the EQ. So, and I just thought it all worked really, really well. And also had Roy Bitton on keyboards. That was a great campaigner post that for us to kind of expand a little bit from being a 4-piece to 5-piece. And then so Alan Clark joined after that in order to kind of get anywhere near what we'd created in and making movies. And I just it's just the whole recording is me playing, and it's just John hasn't got his part sorted. Mark's just playing a notional guitar and then doing a bit of singing, not Ala Dylan, just like giving a tracer vocal, almost like encouragement. Second verse, same as the first. No, so this is according. And and Roy Bitton's playing because he's consummate professional from the E Street Band. So it's me and Roy, and kind of second guessing what Mark's looking for and what he's going to put on, and it kind of worked really, really well. Sounds great. Thank you, Shelley, if you're still around. The perseverance, the persistence paid off, and but yeah, if you want to listen to them, folks, please headphones or speakers, but don't use the tin. That's what I just beg you. Please don't use the tin.
Absolutely. And then just in terms of that track itself, I mean, the video is a fun little video, and we get to see some of your dance moves at the end of that as well, don't we?
Oh, that's Lester Bookbinder. He produced that. Yeah. I'm very uncomfortable when I see myself on film, but yeah. It was just the three of us because David had gone and Alan and Hal hadn't been recruited. So it was just promotion for the record, really. I think we did that somewhere down in back of Chelsea somewhere. Yeah. Yes, dance moves. Yeah, I was the one. I was the clown. I had to be the clown because nobody else would do it. so that's drummers are supposed to be the clowns anyway, but we're the glue that keeps things together.
So as you say, don't listen to this on tin. Make sure you listen to these 5 selections on good quality stereos, and make sure you got some good headphones, that sort of thing. And just to run you through the songs again, we've got Spring with Painted Ship, fantastic track. Bert with Lost Love. We have the brilliant Ralph McTell with Nightmares. Bob Dylan's Gotta Serve Somebody, and finishing off with Dire Straits and Skateaway. Pick, it's been a pleasure spending such time with you, and I love your selections as well. Thank you so much for your time.
Bye, folks. Enjoy. Headphones, speakers.